Japarov works part-time on a farm on the outskirts of Bishkek. Winter is especially hard for Kyrgyz farmers, but Japarov is confident the man he's voting for in the presidential election will win and put an end to the corruption and political mismanagement Kyrgyzstan has suffered since independence following the collapse of the Soviet Union 30 years ago.
Sadyr Japarov lost his father, his mother and son when he was in prison, so he understands a hard life. He's a sincere guy. He has an open heart and he will do a lot for ordinary people. Compared to other politicians who say one thing but think and do another, Japarov is honest, and with God's help he will be our leader.
There are at least 15 other candidates running in this presidential election, but analysts say none of them have the level of support that Sadyr Japarov has in rural communities of Kyrgyzstan. A little more than 3 months ago, Japarov was serving a jail term for kidnapping, a crime he says he never committed because he wasn't in the country at the time it happened. He was freed from prison by supporters in protests after October's parliamentary election, an election that was made invalid because of widespread allegations of vote buying. Japarov spoke to supporters on the last day of his presidential campaign. He became the country's acting leader when both the Prime Minister and President resigned amid protests after the failed parliamentary poll. He called for presidential elections before stepping down, as per the constitution, so he could run for president himself. He describes himself as a Kyrgyz nationalist from a conservative rural background. He was a member of parliament under one of 3 presidents overthrown in revolutions over the last 30 years. Despite his recent promises to crack down on corruption, his critics say he is being soft on leaders of powerful criminal networks by offering them amnesty if they hand over stolen and laundered money to the state. This is Japarov surrounded by supporters after they freed him from jail and stormed the parliament building in October. He says what he describes as Kyrgyzstan's 10-year experiment with parliamentary democracy has failed. Voters are being asked to choose between a parliamentary or a presidential system in a referendum that Japarov called for when he was acting Prime Minister. Opponents accuse him of planning to expand his own presidential power if he wins the election.
This is bad for democracy. The parliamentary system, despite its flaws, is still young. A return to a presidential system will reduce the activity of political parties and young people's interest in participating in this country's political future.
Back at the farm, Japarov is looking forward to the election. He says the best chance of a better future for his young family is if Sadyr Japarov wins.
Well, Charles Stratford joins us now live from Bishkek. Charles, so there's a lot at stake then in this election.
There is indeed, chief of which, certainly most prominent in most people's minds here, certainly opponents of Sadyr Japarov, is the kind of effect that what is being described as almost an inevitable victory by him will have on the political future of this country. Kyrgyzstan is often described as having been or having had the most progressive kind of democratic path since its independence from the Soviet Union 30 years ago amongst all the Central Asian states. But opponents of Japarov are saying that the methods that he's used in his campaign and the methods that his supporters have used as well, they describe him as being intimidating and using bullying tactics. Some activists have also complained of receiving threats. There's also complaints about the way that he has used Parliament as well. Bear in mind that this Parliament is seen, by and large, as being pretty much illegitimate. It's made up of the same MPs that we saw before that parliamentary poll in October that was declared null and void because of widespread vote buying. Now, Parliament was responsible not only for making Japarov interim leader after those failed elections, but has also signed off on this referendum, constitutional referendum, which is also happening today, that obviously has huge ramifications potentially for the political future of this country. People being asked to choose between a parliamentary system, the current system, or a presidential one. And Japarov's opponents accuse him of pushing for this presidential system in order to give him potentially more power. There are also questions being asked about Japarov's exact relationship with criminal networks here. He's always denied that he's had no contact with some very powerful mafia bosses, for want of a better description, in Kyrgyzstan. But the fact that he has given them an amnesty, basically give us the money back, rumoured to be hundreds of millions of dollars potentially to the state, and I will ensure your freedom, has called into question just how hard Japarov is going to be on these networks, that have criminal networks that have huge influence here economically and politically. So it's been a fascinating 3 months here. It's going to be a very interesting day. People are beginning to cast their ballots. It's a Sunday, so it's been quite a slow start. But as I say, it's expected that we could see quite a substantial win for this man, Sadyr Japarov, and that's not making certainly his critics and opponents very happy at all.
All right, thank you for that. Charles Stratford, live from Bishkek.